Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin with chapter 4, verse 19. We kind of set the stage for this pasuk yesterday. Hashem has had his revelation to Moshe. He's explained to Moshe that he needs to go to Egypt to lead the Jews out of Mitzrayim. Moshe goes back to Midian, to Yisro, to explain to him that he's going to be leaving. And then the very next pasuk says, and Yisro gives Moshe his blessings, that he should go in peace. Very next pasuk says that God said to Moshe in Midian, it's time to go to Egypt now. And we mentioned yesterday the question, why does he have to say God said to Moshe in Midian? Just if you're following the basic flow of the psukim, it's obvious that this was in Midian. It's a really interesting Orach Chaim over here. Orach Chaim on pasuk Yud Tes, excuse me, El Moshe b'Midian. Kavanas HaKasub Bo Da, the Torah is conveying to us, Ki adibur haya b'Midian, that this communication was in Midian. Lahagid shivcho shel Moshe. This is to share a praise of Moshe. Shelo chash al sonav shel Mitzrayim be'eis shetoan ta'anosav harabim. Moshe gave various reasons why it didn't make sense for him to be the one. Moshe explained he had a speech impediment. Moshe explained they're not going to believe me. Moshe said maybe there are others who would be better than me, and so on and so forth. He did not say at any point, I'm scared of the people in Egypt. I mean, let's just give context for a second. Moshe grew up in the royal house. Paros tried to have Moshe killed when he left. That's why he fled. Moshe names a child Eliezer, Kielokei Aviv Ezri, because the God of my father was in my assistance. Vayatzileni mecherev Paro. He saved me from the sword of Paro. That's an explicit pasuk in the Torah. Moshe's life was clearly at risk. Moshe would have been a known figure upon his return to Egypt. Whether or not he would have been a known figure to the Jewish people, he certainly would have been a known figure to the Egyptian government. And Moshe does not say at any point, for all the reasons why you shouldn't go, Moshe doesn't say, I'm persona non grata there. It's dangerous for me to go. Moshe didn't say that at any point to God. And now Hashem tells him, it's time for you to go because the people who wanted to kill you have died themselves. Now, it's very interesting. Rashi says a whole shot over here that refers to Dasan and Aviram because they had become impoverished, because Dasan and Aviram caused Moshe problems. But there are other Rishonim that explain, at least one other Rishon explains, we're talking about the people in the Egyptian government who tried to have Moshe killed. They're not around anymore. So God brings up that issue. God brings up that concern and tells him it's no longer a concern. Everything that Moshe brought up in his discussion with Hashem was about why it doesn't sound like a productive plan for me to be the person, but not about Moshe's personal risk. V'haraya shelo toan ki yarei mivakshe nafsho. The Orach Chaim says the greatest thing that Moshe could have said if it was about himself was, gosh, there are people there who want to kill me. He didn't bring it up. The Imlo Yomer Kasav Midyan Tavo Asfara Klo Hichlik Bedato Shel Moshe Lolechas B'Shlichos Ad Shehuftach B'Pikeil Kimeisum V'Akshi Nafsho Lazeh Amar B'Midyan Lomer Sha'ach Shegomer Bedato V'Hiskim Hashem Lolechas Hushin Ispasev Lo Yadover Zeh Ba'akvo. If the Torah wouldn't have said that, Hashem conveys to Moshe in Midian that the people who wanted you dead are dead themselves, and it's fine, then I would have assumed that this was a nagging point for Moshe. Whether or not it was explicitly in Psukim before, I would have assumed that this was a real, a real glitch in the plan as far as Moshe was concerned. Now God tells him we don't have to worry about it anymore. The fact that it says that Hashem conveys this to Midian, says the Orach Chaim conveys that this is after Moshe has clearly said, I'm in, has clearly told Yisro he's going. It's an afterthought when God says it's an ideal time to go because whoever wants you dead is dead themselves. And it just gives an appreciation for Moshe's devotion and determination to the task. I think it's an interesting shot. I want to just mention one more thing, and I think we can appreciate this just in our general life experiences. there are many times where people say things that, whether it be that they think something is a good idea, whether it be they think something is a bad idea, that their thoughts can be understood on multiple levels. So it's very interesting. So Moshe, for example, says, they're not going to believe me. Moshe says, I have a speech impediment. Why is he worried? He could be worried for two very different reasons. He could be worried because he doesn't think the plan is going to work well. He could also be worried because he thinks he's going to make a fool of himself. And that might be a justified concern. But if you think about this Orach Chaim, besides the fact that Orach Chaim is clarifying that the issue of Moshe's personal safety was not on his mind when he was reluctant to take the assignment, that I think also now redefines all the points Moshe did make. It wasn't about him. It was about the mission. I don't think it makes sense for me to be the one. But it's not, I'm worried I'm going to make a fool of myself. No, if that's what my people need and God says to do it, I'll do it. Just an interesting thing to think about. Okay, verse 27. Vayomer Hashem el Aaron, Hashem said to Aaron, Lech likras Moshe hamidbara, go greet Moshe in the desert. Remember, Aaron himself was a prophet. God conveys to Aaron, your brother Moshe is on his way. Go meet him. Vayelech, and he went. Vayifkesheyu b'har Elokim, and Aaron met up with Moshe at the mountain of God. Presumably, that's the mountain upon which there was the revelation with the burning bush. Vayishak lo, and he kissed him. Whenever you have a pasuk this, we have a similar pasuk with Yosef and Yaakov. Who kissed who? Why is it only one person kissing the other and not both ways? So two interesting pshatim over here. And by the way, why is it important that he kissed him? Well, you know what I mean? Like, is this just a nice way of saying they greeted each other? What's the meaning here? Sforno pasuk chaf zayin, vayishak lo kimenashek davar kadosh. Like someone would kiss a holy article. It's an interesting thing. So the Sforno is explaining the kavod, the honor with which Aaron, and he's saying that's what the pasuk is conveying, with which Aaron is greeting Moshe. Which is an interesting thing. I mean, it's a very interesting sort of sidebar in this part of the story, the dynamic between Moshe and Aaron. I think it's a very powerful thing to think about. We in this group have spoken so much over the past weeks and I guess months about sibling dynamics and Sefer Bereshis. So Aaron's the older brother. By the way, Aaron's the one who's been dealing with the Jews in Egypt. What his role is or isn't, it's so unclear, of course. Mefarshim seem to see him as some kind of leader among the Jewish people, but whatever. Aaron's been in it. Moshe grew up in the royal palace. It was very, very nice that he stood up for the Jew who was being maligned by an Egyptian. It's very beautiful, very inspiring. But he was around the Jewish people for like a day or two, something like that, before he fled. So what do you mean, Moshe? Just try to put it in modern day terms. Who's Moshe anyway? I'm the older brother. I'm the one who's really bared the burdens of the people. And Aaron sees Moshe, and as Hashem assured Moshe earlier in the parsha, that Aaron will see you and he'll be happy in his heart. Sforno says, I mean, again, obviously this is not exactly what was meant in context, but the way we would relate to it, it's like Aaron kissed Moshe like you would kiss a Sefer Torah that came in the room. You know, it's just an interesting thing to think about. Okay, Orach Chaim on the pasuk. Wait a second. I'm sorry. Something is missing. Oh, we have a technical difficulty. Ramban on the pasuk. Those Mikros Kedolos are great, but one is on top of the other. Okay, Ramban on the pasuk. Second Ramban on pasuk Chavzayin, Vayishak lo. Aaron nashak l'Moshe. Aaron kissed Moshe. Ki Moshe ha'anav Na'ag kavod ba'achiv hakadol. Moshe, in his humility, wanted to treat his father with honor. V'lochein lo amar vayishku ish lachiv. Says the Ramban, they didn't kiss each other because it would be disrespectful for Moshe to kiss Aaron. I just want to give context for a second. This might strike some of you as strange. I actually can relate to this very well. In the yeshiva world, close students, mentors, when they meet, especially like at a simcha or something like that, they might kiss each other. That's not abnormal at all. In the dynamic, I mean, it could be if it's a unique moment like a simcha or something like that. If I would see a longtime Rebbe of mine and he would bend over to kiss me, it might be strange for me to kiss him. What can I tell you? If he kisses me, it's an expression of affection. If I kiss him, it's like treating him like he's my peer or something. I mean, that is the common dynamic in certain things, and that seems to be the pshat. I do freely kiss my parents, I should say, but it's an expression of affection and no disrespect at all. But the point is, there's a very interesting. So the Sforno that we saw was showing Aaron's tremendous regard for Moshe, and what I think is just as significant, the Ramban that we saw is showing Moshe's tremendous regard for Aaron. That he's not kissing him was a respect for Aaron. It's just something interesting to think about. Okay. Okay, a little bit on the technical side, chapter 5, verse 2. Let's just really fast. Vayomer Paro. So they come into Paro, they make their pitch. Moshe and Aaron make their pitch. It's time to let the Jewish people go to serve God, etc. Vayomer Paro, and Paro said, Mi Hashem asher hashma b'kolo. Who is God that I should listen to him? L'shalach es Yisrael, to send out the Jewish people. Lo yadati es Hashem, I don't know God. V'gam es Yisrael lo ashalech, and I also am not going to send out the Jewish people. Well, if you don't know God, you probably aren't going to send out the Jewish people. Like, it sounds like a strange one. I don't know him, and by the way, I'm not going to fulfill his request. Well, yeah, right. So there's something that seems excessive about these two phrases. So just for the sake of time, let's just see the Orach Chaim. We can see it pretty fast. Orach Chaim pasuk beis. Asher hashma l'shalach. Yichavin lomar ma kocho agadol l'shma b'kolo b'davar gadol kazeh l'shalach. Who's this God that you speak of? Who's this great God that you speak of that I should send out the Jewish people because God said so? Are you kidding? Why should I listen to you? Why should I listen to him? V'chazer lomar shedvar v'rabusim damru. Hagam shia gadol avlama'od lo yovazel shalach Yisrael. So Orach Chaim says that Paro is saying two things. One thing that he's saying is, I think this idea that you're like representing God and I should drop everything because you're representing God is preposterous. I don't know what this, I don't believe in this God that you're talking about. I'm not impressed by this God that you're talking about. But by the way, even if I was impressed, which I'm not, I'm still not going to let the Jewish people go. So that's the, so even if he proves himself to me, there's no way I'm letting them go. And that is a remarkable job of Paro filling the script to the T for the story to play out in the dramatic way that, of course, we know that it does. That whatever you prove to me, I'm not letting them go. And that, of course, it sets the stage wonderfully for the plagues and the hardening of his heart, etc. So we discussed this morning the Orach Chaim regarding Moshe's lack of concern regarding his own personal safety. We discussed the Ramban and the Sforno regarding the kissing with Moshe and Aaron, and we discussed the Orach Chaim regarding Paro's basic position statement to Moshe and Aaron.